Good morning everyone. Today I'm gonna discuss the pre-colonial period in the Philippines. Barangay. A barangay, historically referred to as barrio. It is the smallest administrative divisions in the Philippines, and it is the native Filipino term for village, district, or ward. Barangay consists of 30 to 100 families and live through fishing, picking, and hunting. In water areas, they look for fish, shells, and pearls as their source of living. They also used boats and crafts as their means of transportation for an easier and carrying their goods for trades from one place to another. For those people located in land areas, they cultivate land and plant rice, bananas, and crops. The first group of inhabitants had lived in Tabon Cave, Palawan. The cave were researched by Dr. Robert Fox and team from the National Museum of the Philippines between 1962 and 1966. The greatest finds of was the skull cap of the Tabon man. It is believed to be approximately 22,000 to 24,000 years old. The team found over 1,500 jars, which they believed that these were they put the remains of their dead loved ones. Slavery was widespread in the Philippine Islands before the archipelago was integrated into the Spanish Empire. Policies banning slavery that the Spanish crown established for its empire in the Americas were extended to its colony in the Philippines. The Viceroyalty of New Spain oversaw the Philippines administratively, and the terminus of the Manila Galleon and Acapulco sometimes saw the importance of Philippine slaves, who were labeled chinos. Crown policies regarding the favorable treatment of indigenous populations and prohibition of slavery were enforced in the Americas since the early 16th century. These were initially not always adhered to, though with some time and following the spread of Christianity, slavery was completely abolished. There are three powers of the chieftain. Number one is executive. An executive is a powerful person who is responsible for making things run smoothly. If you become an executive, you might be in charge of an organization. Second is legislative. Means having the power or authority to make laws, the legislative branch of government. And lastly, judicial is the in charge of deciding the meaning of laws, how to apply them in real situation, and whether a law breaks the rules of the Constitution. There are also type of social classification in the pre-colonial period, which is Datu, Maharlika, and Alipin. Datu is the title which denotes the ruler of numerous indigenous people throughout the Philippine archipelago. He is the executive, legislative, and the judge in times of peace, and the commander of chief in times of wars. Next is Maharlika. Maharlika means freeman or freedman. There are also the feudal warriors in an ancient Tagalog society. The Spanish translated the name as Hidalgos. They belong to the lower nobility class, similar to Timawa of the Visayan people. And lastly is the Alipin. Alipin refers to the lowest social class among the various cultures. The most common translation of the word is servant or slave, as opposed to higher class or the Maharlikas. Now we go to the Spanish era. The Portuguese navigator and explorer Ferdinand Magellan headed his first Spanish foray to the Philippines when he made landfall in Cebu in March 1521. A short time later, he met an untimely death on the nearby island of Mactan. after King Philip II had dispatched 3 further expeditions that ended in disaster. He sent out Miguel Lopez de Legazpi, who established the first permanent Spanish settlement in Cebu in 1565. The Spanish city of Manila was founded in 1571, and by the end of the 16th century, most of the coastal and lowland areas from Luzon to northern Mindanao were under Spanish control. Friars marched with soldiers and soon accomplished the nominal conversion to Roman Catholicism of all the local people under the Spanish administration, but the Muslim of Mindanao and Sulu, whom the Spanish called Moros, were never completely subdued by Spain. In the first place, how did he discover the Philippines? Or how did Magellan discover the Philippines? On September 20, 1519, Ferdinand Magellan, a Portuguese explorer working for Spain, led the first expedition to circumnavigate the globe in search for valuable spices, bringing his crew of 241 men and fleeting of 5 ships, which is Trinidad, San Antonio, Concepcion, Victoria, and Santiago. Magellan's expedition was undertaken because the Spaniards were looking for an alternate routes to the east, wanted to discover lands, spices, and gold. And but he expand Spanish territory and spread Christianity. Magellan travel was long and arduous, and only 2 ships survived it. He discovered the Strait of Magellan and the southern tip of South America and became the first European to cross the Pacific Ocean. His remaining ships arrived in Homonhon Island in Samar on March 16, 1521, named it Isla San Lazaro, erected a cross and claimed it for Spain. The islands were named Filipinas or Philippines in the modern era in honor of King Philip of Spain. The first Catholic Mass was celebrated on Limasawa Island in Leyte on March 31, 1521. The Spanish friar Father Pedro Valderrama. Among these present were Raha Saigu and Raha Colombo, were forged a blood compact with Magellan. Father Valderrama baptized the 2 Rahas and 400 natives in April 14, 1521, in Cebu, where Magellan erected a huge cross, the famous Magellan Cross, and gifted the converts the Santo Niño images as piece of symbol. Magellan was killed by poisoned arrows on 1521 during the Battle of Mactan by natives of the islands led by local chieftain Lapu-Lapu, who refused to recognize Spanish authority. The battle was considered the first Filipino resistance against foreign invaders. Lapu-Lapu was hailed a hero. Magellan was credited with leading the first expedition that provided that the world is round by sailing from east to west.